I first see the photograph on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in March, the kind of grey sky day when the university library feels like a ship adrift. The history department has assigned me to digitize a batch of rural education records from the early 20th century. Dusty folders, ledgers, attendance sheets, and photographs that smell faintly of mildew and chalk. It's monotonous work, but the archive scanner hums softly, and I find comfort in the rhythm of lifting glass, aligning edges, clicking capture, and typing metadata. Most of the images are class portraits, children posed before clapboard schoolhouses, hands folded or fidgeting, eyes wide in that stiff, self-conscious way old lenses demanded. But then, I reach an envelope labeled in fading pencil. Marrow Creek Elementary, 1924. The name tugs at me. I've never heard of Marrow Creek, though it sounds like something from a ghost story told by lantern light. The photo inside is sepia, roughly 8 by 10, its corners worn to soft curves. I slide it carefully onto the scanner bed. A teacher stands to the far left, her expression calm but wary, as though she'd been caught between patience and fatigue. 20 children are arranged in 3 rows, the back row standing, middle kneeling, front sitting cross-legged on the brittle autumn grass. Their clothes are plain, wool sweaters, suspenders, pinafores, but the detail is startling. I can almost hear the rustle of fabric. As the scanner light sweeps beneath the glass, something about the composition feels slightly crowded. I count the faces once, twice, 20 children. Yet when I cross-reference the enrollment roster tucked in the same envelope, it lists only 19 names. At first I assume a clerical error, perhaps a visiting cousin or a neighbor included for the novelty of the photograph. But when I check the attendance log, each name is accounted for. Every desk, every mark tallied. 19. Always 19. The discrepancy gnaws at me. I zoom in on the digital preview. The mystery child sits in the middle row, third from the right. She's younger than most, maybe 7, with light hair pulled back by a ribbon that appears almost translucent under the exposure. Her dress seems finer than the others, lace collar, faint embroidery, but more striking are her eyes. While every other child squints against the sun, hers are wide open, bright and flat, catching no reflection. I tell myself it's a trick of early film, that uncanny artifact of long exposures, yet something feels off. The edges of her outline blur faintly, as if she doesn't quite occupy the same depth as the rest. The metadata uploads automatically to the server. Marrow Creek Elementary, 1924, group photo. I tag it as complete and move on, but my gaze keeps drifting back. That night, after the archive closes, I open the file again on my laptop. The image appears darker than before. Maybe it's the lighting in my apartment, maybe fatigue. I zoom in once more on the mysterious girl. Her expression seems slightly changed. Mouth closed now, or perhaps just the shadow shifting differently across her lips. I check the timestamp to ensure I haven't opened a modified version. It's identical. Same resolution, same hash ID. Still, I feel a prickling unease crawl across my neck. I minimize the image, but its afterimage clings to my vision. 20 children, 19 names. I make a note to mention it to Professor Rahman, my archival supervisor, though I already anticipate his reaction. Old rosters are messy, Eleanor. People forget. Move on. I try. By Thursday, I've scanned nearly 200 photographs, yet I keep returning to that single frame. The girl's pale face haunts the periphery of my thoughts, hovering between curiosity and dread. Finally, I give in. The following morning, I pull the original print from the storage drawer again. Under the sterile LED lights of the preservation room, the photo looks ordinary, almost dull. But as I tilt it slightly, something catches. The faintest indentation on the back of the cardstock, as though someone had written there long ago and the ink had vanished. I angle the paper under the light. The impression resolves into a few shallow words. She came back that day. The letters are small, uneven, carved by a trembling hand. I freeze. The temperature in the room feels colder now, though the thermostat remains steady at 20 degrees Celsius. The hum of the dehumidifier recedes until I hear only my heartbeat in my ears. She came back. Back from where? That evening, I search for any reference to Marrow Creek Elementary in the university's regional database. The name surfaces only twice, in a 1937 county ledger listing the school as closed due to consolidation, and again in a 1952 fire insurance record marking the property destroyed, structure non-extant. No mention of accidents, epidemics, or scandals. Nothing that would explain a phantom enrollment. At midnight, unable to sleep, I dig deeper online. I find a genealogy forum where a user mentions attending the new Marrow Creek School in the 1960s, built several miles from the original site. Buried in the comments, one reply catches my eye. My grandmother used to tell us stories about the old school. Said one of the kids disappeared right before picture day. Teacher never talked about it after. The class counted 19 desks, but the photo showed 20. The post is dated 2009. The username, Clara Lowe 78. I hesitate. The name feels familiar. Then I remember, one of the students listed on the roster was Margaret Lowe, age 8. I check again. The names line up alphabetically. Lowe, Margaret, present. But there's no Clara. I stare at the screen. When I enlarge the photo yet again, the girl in the middle row, my extra face, sits directly beside Margaret Lowe. Their features bear a faint resemblance. Same chin, same slope of nose, though the girl's skin is paler, almost translucent under the grain. Could they have been sisters? Twins, perhaps? But the roster lists only one Lowe child enrolled that year. The next morning, I print a high-resolution copy and bring it to Professor Rahman. He squints, skeptical. 19, 20, these old records aren't exact. It's probably an unregistered student or a visiting cousin. Then why does the back say she came back that day? I ask. He frowns. People scribble things. Archivists, family members, pranksters don't get lost in sentimentality. I leave his office unconvinced. That night, a power outage rolls across campus during a spring thunderstorm. My apartment goes dark, except for the glow of my laptop battery. Out of habit, I open the Marrow Creek image offline. The girl's figure flickers faintly, as though the pixels themselves are unstable. When lightning flashes through my window, I could swear her eyes are turned toward me. The file name blinks once, then updates itself. MC1924_REVISED.JEPEG. I didn't rename it. When I check the properties, the file's modified date reads March 21st, 1925, nearly a century before I was born. I slam the lid shut. Sleep evades me. I dream of old wooden floors creaking under small feet, of rows of desks illuminated by slanting sunlight, of a teacher calling attendance while one name echoes unanswered. In the morning, I find a thin layer of dust across my desk that wasn't there before, as though the room itself has aged overnight. I decide to retrace the image's origin. The shipping label on the archive box indicates it came from the estate of Thomas and Ruth Anderson, donated by their granddaughter last year. I find her contact information in the donor file. Rebecca Anderson, an accountant in Winnipeg. When I email her asking about the photograph, she replies within the hour. Hi, Eleanor. That box came from my grandparents' attic. I never looked inside. You mentioned a school photo. That must be from my grandfather's hometown, Marrow Creek. He taught there for 1 year before the fire, a teacher. I ask if she has any surviving documents, letters, journals. She sends a follow-up message later that evening. There was a small notebook tucked inside a Bible, I think. I can scan it for you if it's useful." She does. The handwriting is delicate, masculine, fading into brown. The first entry is dated October 17th, 1924, the same day the photo was likely taken. The children lined up today for the annual picture. 19 of them, though when the photographer adjusted his lens, I thought for a moment there were 20. The exposure took longer than expected. I told the children to hold still, but one of the girls, Lowe's I think, kept glancing at something behind me. When I turned, the window was empty. The photographer said nothing. Afterward, the print came back with 20 faces. I asked him to retouch it. He refused. The following entry chills me. They say the Lowe girl had a sister who drowned last year. No one speaks of it here. I begin to wonder if that's who stood behind me when the flash went off. I close the file, my pulse hammering. The girl who wasn't enrolled, the one who came back. Later that week, I revisit the digital image one last time, intending to store it properly and forget the rest. But as I open it, the frame takes longer to load, pixels crawling line by line until the full picture resolves. Only now, there are 21 faces. The new one is faint, almost spectral, positioned in the far right corner among the front row children. Her posture mirrors my own photograph from my university ID. Same tilt of head, same uneven parting of hair. My throat tightens. I count again, certain my mind is fracturing from fatigue. 21. When I move the cursor over the ghostly outline, a tooltip appears that shouldn't exist in a static image. Eleanor Whitby, added March 19th, 2024. The power flickers and the screen goes black. When the power returns, it's nearly dawn. The storm outside has broken, leaving the air sharp and metallic, the way it smells after lightning strikes close to home. My laptop reboots with a faint whine, and for several seconds the screen remains a uniform grey before the desktop appears. The Marrow Creek photo icon sits where I left it, except the file name is different again. I hover the cursor above it, hand trembling. The metadata claims the file was last modified at 3:12 a.m., while the power had been out and my computer unplugged. I don't open it. Not yet. Instead, I pace the narrow length of my apartment, my mind clawing for logic. There has to be an explanation, some syncing issue, an auto-update glitch from the university server. But deep down, I know the computer wasn't connected to Wi-Fi. I'd unplugged everything when the storm hit. Finally, I take a breath and double-click. The image loads slowly, the pixel resolution higher than any of my previous scans. The children's faces are sharper now, almost three-dimensional in their clarity. Even the background siding of the schoolhouse shows each groove in the wood, each nail head. But my stomach twists when I see the middle row again. The pale-haired girl, my unlisted student, has turned her head. Not just slightly, but fully, gazing directly at the camera. Her expression is no longer passive. It's knowing. The corners of her mouth are lifted in a faint, unnatural smile. And the faintest question mark, drawn in pencil above her head in the original photo, has darkened, as though freshly inked. I close the file, hard. The next day, I skip my morning seminar and head straight to the city archives downtown. If anyone has records on Marrow Creek beyond what's been digitized, it'll be there. The archivist on duty, a man named Colin with round glasses and nicotine-stained fingers, frowns when I show him the printout. Marrow Creek, you say? He flips through a brittle index catalogue. That's rural northern Manitoba, isn't it? Most of those township records were lost after the 1952 fire. I'm looking for anything before that. School ledgers, local newspapers, death records. He raises an eyebrow. Specific name? Lowe. Possibly Margaret, and maybe Clara. He mutters something and disappears into the stacks. 10 minutes later, he returns with a cardboard file tied with yellowing twine. You're in luck, he says, setting it down. Partial school board records, 1923 to 1926. But they're fragile. No photography allowed. I nod. The folder's contents are sparse: attendance registers, teacher payment vouchers, and one folded document titled Marrow Creek Accident Report. My hands go cold as I unfold it. Date: September 9th, 1923. Subject: Incident involving low children at Marrow Creek Bridge. Summary: During afternoon recess, 2 students, Margaret and Clara Lowe, were observed playing near the creek bridge against instruction. Ice conditions unstable. Witness accounts conflict, but it appears both fell through. Rescuers recovered Margaret alive several yards downstream. Body of Clara not recovered. Beneath it, a note in different handwriting, dated the following spring. Snowmelt receding. Search concluded. Declared deceased. The next sheet is a class roster dated October 1924, the year of my photograph. Only one Lowe remains. I sit back, pulse hammering in my temples. Clara drowned. The extra face in the photograph appeared a year later, beside her surviving sister. My reflection in the archive window looks ghostly in the morning light. The world outside is ordinary. Buses, pedestrians, the sound of rain guttering from the roof, but the air feels hollowed out. When I ask Colin if there are any photographs from Marrow Creek in their possession, he shakes his head. Only the one we used to have, he says. A class portrait, I think. But it was lost decades ago. Something about the image degrading every time they tried to reproduce it. My throat tightens. What do you mean, degrading? He rubs the back of his neck. Dark spots, smears, faces fading or shifting position. They said the negatives were cursed, but I chalk that up to bad preservation. Why? I manage a thin smile. Just academic curiosity. He laughs softly. You wouldn't believe how many researchers get caught up in Marrow Creek. It's got that kind of legend around it. But trust me, some stories are better left to folklore. That night, I write everything down. The photos' anomalies, the inscription, the Lowe sisters, the strange digital shifts. I draft an email to Professor Rahman detailing my findings, but stop short of sending it. How do you explain that a century-old photograph is rewriting itself? I decide instead to drive to Marrow Creek. It's a 4-hour trip north, through endless pine and rolling fog. My phone signal drops within the first 2 hours, replaced by a hum of static that seeps faintly through the car speakers, even when the radio's off. The coordinates from the old school records lead me to a flat clearing bordered by trees. A narrow foundation trench marks where the school once stood. There's nothing else. No plaque, no ruins, just a patch of brittle grass and an unsettling quiet. I park and step out, clutching my printout. The wind moves through the trees in slow breaths, like an animal sleeping nearby. As I approach the clearing, I notice a faint outline in the soil, rectangular, shallow, perhaps where the schoolhouse walls once stood. I kneel to touch the ground and feel something hard beneath the dirt. When I dig gently with my hands, my fingers brush glass. I lift it free, a fragment of a photograph plate, edges jagged, surface clouded with age. Yet through the grime, I can make out a partial face. A child's, eyes open, mouth slack. The wind rises sharply, scattering leaves across the clearing. I shove the fragment into my bag and retreat to the car. That night, back in my apartment, I rinse the fragment under water and hold it against the lamp. The partial image resolves into the left half of a young girl's face, hair ribbon, lace collar, the same girl from the photograph. Except now, her lips appear parted in a faint whisper. My heart lurches when I realize the fragment's backside bears etched letters, ML/CL, scratched faintly in what looks like a child's handwriting. Margaret and Clara Lowe, twins. The moment I set the fragment down, my laptop pings softly. The Marrow Creek image, MC1924_FINAL.TIF has updated again, automatically. When I open it, the interface freezes for a full minute before loading. This time, the entire photo seems slightly desaturated, the children's outlines blurred around the edges like smoke. But one thing is unmistakable. The background of the schoolhouse has changed. Where there was once smooth wooden siding, faint scorch marks now streak upward, black as soot. And through the window behind the children, the reflection of flames flickers faintly. I can't breathe. Then I notice the timestamp at the bottom corner, March 25th, 2024. Auto-generated. No network, no edits, no explanation. I scroll closer. The pale-haired girl is still there, her eyes locked on the lens. But now she's holding something in her lap. A piece of broken glass. My broken glass. I slam the laptop shut so hard the desk rattles. For the next 2 days, I try to convince myself it's a hallucination born of exhaustion. I stop sleeping, drinking only coffee and staring blankly at the wall. Yet, every night, the photograph's reflection lingers in the corner of my vision. I start hearing faint knocks near my apartment door. Always 3. Always around 3:17 a.m., the same minute the photo's first timestamp changed. On the third night, the knocks come again, but this time there's a voice. Soft, childlike. Eleanor, you found me. I freeze. My pulse throbs painfully in my throat. Who's there? Silence. Then, closer, almost inside the room. She wants her back. The lamp flickers once and dies. For a heartbeat, I see movement in the dark, a shape no larger than a child crouched near the window. The smell of damp wood and old paper fills the air, the scent of something lifted from a long buried attic. I don't scream. I simply whisper, "Clara." The figure tilts its head. Then, slowly, it dissolves into the darkness, leaving only the faint imprint of small handprints on the window pane. The next morning, I make one last, desperate attempt at rationality. I drive to the university archive to speak to Rahman. But when I arrive, the storage drawer that once held the Marrow Creek photo is empty. The inventory sheet taped to the cabinet door reads, "Item relocated to National Historical Collection, Ottawa, March 22nd, 2024. I stare in disbelief. "That's impossible," I mutter to the technician on duty. "It was here 3 days ago." He checks the log. "Funny thing, actually. We shipped a duplicate to Ottawa months ago." "A duplicate?" He nods. "They requested the original print last year for a restoration project." I blink. "No. This print came from our university's donation in January." He shrugs. "Then I don't know what to tell you, miss. The National Collection already logged their copy as received and restored." I feel the blood drain from my face. "Restored?" He nods again. "Digitally retouched, color corrected, everything. They sent us a thank you letter just last week. Said your name was on the submission." "My name? Eleanor Whitby." I stumble back a step. "That's not possible. I didn't send anything." He frowns. "Then who did?" By the time I reach my car, I'm trembling. I call the museum in Ottawa, but the line routes me through endless automated menus before a human voice answers. A polite woman named Lucille. "Yes," she says after checking the database. "We received the Marrow Creek Elementary photo 3 months ago. The restoration was quite successful, though there was some confusion about provenance. Your signature was on the shipment form." "Lucille," I say slowly. "How long ago did you say you received it?" "December 12th, 2023. "That's not possible. I can send you a digital proof if you'd like," she offers. "Please." She emails it within minutes. When I open the attachment, My breath catches. The image is pristine. Clean lines, crisp detail, the sepia tones balanced perfectly. But the caption beneath it reads, Marrow Creek Elementary, 1924. Donated by E. Whitby, 2023. And there in the front row, seated cross-legged among the children, is a girl who wasn't there before. Dark hair, uneven parting. My own face, smiling faintly. I don't remember driving home, only the cold steering wheel under my hands, the sound of tires hissing across wet pavement, and the hollow echo of that digital image burned behind my eyes. My own face, younger, out of place, smiling faintly among the dead. I should have called someone, a colleague, a doctor, anyone who might tether me to reason. But reason had already abandoned me the moment I saw that photograph. So instead, I printed it. I needed to hold it in my hands, to feel the paper, to prove it was real. When the printer finished, I pulled the sheet out, heart pounding. The ink was still damp. I studied every face, the children, the teacher, the faint backdrop of trees beyond the schoolhouse. And there I was, sitting cross-legged in the front row, head slightly tilted, wearing a dress I didn't own, couldn't own. My smile was wrong, not warm, not childish, fixed. There was a faint smudge on the corner of the print. I brushed it instinctively, thinking it was dust. But when I touched it, the ink bled, not outward, but inward, as if the image were absorbing my fingerprint. The paper pulsed once, faintly. I dropped it. For 2 days, I avoided the university. I told Rahman I had the flu, ignored my inbox, shut off my phone. But the silence in my apartment became unbearable. The floor creaked at odd intervals, like someone shifting their weight just out of sight. I found myself glancing at the walls, half expecting to see movement behind them. A child's shadow, small and waiting. On the third night, the air grew dense again. That same smell, wet paper, wood smoke, and something metallic beneath it. When I turned toward my desk, the printed photo lay there, though I'd left it in the kitchen drawer. The children's faces had dimmed, fading into the paper like breath on glass. All except the girl, the one wearing my face. Her features were sharper now, the eyes glossier, her head tilted further to the side. And behind her, half hidden by the line of seated students, another figure was beginning to appear. A hand, pale and reaching, rested lightly on her shoulder. I could see the edge of a wrist, a sleeve too long for a child. Someone was standing behind me in the photograph. I went back to the archives at dawn. The building was empty, the security lights still glowing blue across the floor. I used my pass to unlock the photo lab and slid the print under the scanner. The lens swept across it in a bright line of white, and for a moment I thought I heard whispering, faint, overlapping voices rising from the hum of the machine. When the scan finished, I enlarged the image to 400%. There was no mistaking it. The hand on my shoulder belonged to a girl standing in the back row. Her hair was pale, her expression unreadable. Her eyes were too wide, her skin too translucent, as though light were shining through her. Clara Lowe. And she was looking not at the camera, but at me. The reflection in her pupils showed my own silhouette, blurred and indistinct, as though I had been standing there when the photo was taken. I felt my breath falter. That afternoon, I drove back to Marrow Creek one last time. Snow had begun to fall again, thin white flakes dissolving against the windshield. The sky was a low ceiling of grey. Every turn of the road felt inevitable, as if I'd been traveling toward this moment my whole life. When I reached the clearing, the landscape was unrecognizable. A wide sheet of pale silence. Only the dark shape of the old foundation broke through the snow. I stepped out, the wind slicing across my face. The fragment of the glass plate weighed heavily in my coat pocket. At the center of the clearing, I stopped. The world felt suspended. No sound, no birds, no wind in the trees. just the faint crackle of frost beneath my boots. I took the glass from my pocket and held it up to the air. For a moment, nothing. Then, faintly, a reflection bloomed on the surface. A schoolhouse. Children seated in neat rows, the teacher at the center, and one empty space near the front. My space. I realized, with a sudden clarity that made my skin crawl, that the photograph had never been static. It had been waiting, unfinished, an open wound in time, calling back what had been left incomplete. "Clara," I whispered. The wind shifted. A child's voice, faint and close to my ear. "You shouldn't have come back." I spun around, but the clearing was empty. Only the snow moved, swirling into the outline of a figure no taller than my shoulder. The shape of a little girl formed in the frost, hair blowing, eyes hollow with light. "You found me," she said again. Her voice wasn't pleading, it was relieved. And in that moment, I understood. She wasn't trapped in the photograph. I was. The sky dimmed, as though the world were losing voltage. The snow fell slower, heavier. My breath clouded the air in sharp bursts. "Why me?" I asked. Clara tilted her head. "You remember." "I don't." But I did. I had seen this place before, not in dreams, but in fragments. Old newspaper photos my grandmother used to keep in her sewing box. A faded class portrait, the edges burned. She'd told me it was the only picture of her sister before the accident. My grandmother's maiden name had been Margaret Lowe. The realization struck like a physical blow. I stumbled backward, the glass fragment slipping from my hand. It shattered in the snow, scattering reflections of faces that weren't mine. "You shouldn't have looked," Clara said softly. She wanted to stay forgotten. "Who?" "The one who took the picture." A gust of wind tore across the clearing. The air filled with ash-colored flakes, not snow, but soot. And for the first time, I saw the outline of the old schoolhouse reassembling in the smoke, its walls shimmering like a mirage. Through the doorway stood a figure, tall, human, but indistinct. The faint click of a camera shutter echoed through the stillness. The sound came again and again. Each flash of light illuminated the faces of the children inside, blank, waxy, motionless. Their eyes glowed faintly, as though lit from behind. Clara stood beside me, watching. "He took more than pictures," she whispered. "He said they'd live forever." The figure raised the camera once more. "Don't look," she said. But I did. Light exploded. When my vision cleared, I was standing in front of the class again, not in snow, but sunlight. The children were real, alive, breathing. The teacher smiled stiffly from the edge of the frame. "Hold still," the photographer said. My body obeyed without thought, my muscles locked, my mouth frozen in that faint, fixed smile. Across from me, Clara stood among the back row, her eyes shimmering with tears. "I'm sorry," I tried to whisper, but no sound came out. The camera clicked. The light dimmed. I woke up in my apartment. At least, it looked like my apartment. Same bookshelves, same kettle, same smell of stale coffee. But something was wrong with the light. It was too soft, too sepia. On my desk sat the photograph. The Marrow Creek class. Perfectly restored, perfectly framed. I moved closer. The children's faces were crisp again, their eyes bright. The teacher smiled faintly. And there in the front row, cross-legged and still, sat a girl wearing my face. Only this time she wasn't smiling. Her mouth was open slightly as if calling for help. I reached for the frame. The glass was warm beneath my fingers. When I turned it toward the window, the reflection behind me changed. For a heartbeat, I saw not my apartment, but the schoolhouse, restored and whole, its windows alive with movement. Children stared back from inside, their faces pressed to the glass. And among them, one girl turned slowly toward me. Her eyes were white, her expression calm. She raised her hand, a mirror of my own, and pressed her palm against the glass. I pressed mine to meet it. The surface flexed, thin as water. No one found me for several days. My colleagues assumed I'd taken an extended leave. Professor Rahman said I'd been behaving distracted before disappearing. They filed a report. Campus security opened my apartment to find everything intact. The kettle unplugged, the laptop still humming faintly on the desk. Only one thing was missing: me. The printed photo lay in the center of the table. The children smiled brightly, their eyes wide and clear. A new figure sat in the front row, half turned toward the lens. The inscription beneath the image now read, "Marrow Creek Elementary, 1924, complete roster." 3 months later, the restored Marrow Creek photo went on display at the National Historical Collection. It was praised for its preservation quality, its haunting clarity, its mysterious authenticity. Visitors noted how lifelike the children looked, how the girl in the center seemed almost ready to blink. Some said, if you looked long enough, her expression changed. Others swore they saw movement in the background, a faint shadow behind the teacher, tall and patient, holding something in his hands. The museum dismissed the rumors, of course. But when the lights dim at closing hour, the staff say they still hear it sometimes, the faint click of a camera shutter echoing from behind the glass. And if you look very closely at the bottom of the frame, in the newest version of the photo, you can just make out a handwritten note. Faint, but legible in the right light. Eleanor Whitby, archivist.